about the recording now, so please click OK or continue. Okay, and so now we'll begin. Our first panelist is Hafiz Zaman. So Hafiz, I will hand the floor over to you for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's good to see you. Good morning, good evening, host, panelists, and audiences. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Hafiz Iman. Today, I'll be presenting my experience as a visiting scholar to start at UMD as an effort to build research capacity on PCVE. Will report the progress of my Malaysian icon simulation platform and also theoretical background of my research in GIS, specifically on the effort to uncover perpetrators in the global terrorism database, GTD, using spatial and also temporal filtering techniques. During my visit, I was part of the icons team on the effort to develop the first Malaysian icons. I was under the supervision of Dr. Devin Ellis and also Ms. Audie Tate. Also engaged in researching on geospatial statistics under Dr. Marcus Boyd, who is the head of the GIS team. Let's start. If there were in the audience right now, I'm so grateful for you and your team having me learn from you. Thank you so much. Next. Okay. My role in START was to help Icons team to develop the Malaysian icons by giving context to the simulation platform. Also, I was and still am helping Dr. Marcus in solving a problem which requires me to develop a so-called inferential GIS method as an initiative. I also look into how geospatial statistics can be relevant to the development of the icon simulation. Next, let us start by looking into icon simulation. Icon simulation is a platform that involves participants. The participant would engage in a role-playing games under a context of a scenario that is simulated by the platform. Next, Icon provides a channel for effective communication and often designed to train participants in making decisions. Next, the communication among participants are established by connecting them via networks similar to your internet called the IconSnet. Next, Icon can be used for several purposes. These purposes include training, which is often the case for an icon simulation to be developed, and also for education and also research. Next, icon simulation provide ways for researchers and clients to evaluate a specific focused topic quantitatively and qualitatively based on data collection and also feedbacks from the participants. Next, for Malaysian icons, the purpose of the simulation is to emulate a social media layout and their communication structure in order to find the best and the most effective messaging for PCVE. The simulation will provide empowerment for youth and training for youth to create a resilience against extreme messaging and trauma these messages may cause. With Malaysian icons, we as a researcher will have a first-hand tool for the response to preventive measure on countering violence and extreme ideology through this training engagement. We will also have a data-informed insight and also analysis on the design and the messaging object for PCVE. Next, the Malaysian icon simulation will start with a scenario which involves an accident between one family and an unknown perpetrator. The repercussion of this event, which we dub as November 15, will trigger another series of events and emergence of a road safety movement, RSM. Next, the simulation will develop into a series of events which we call injects. Participant will witness these events and would, by the very design of the simulation, engage in some kind of a communication through various channels within the IconSnet. Next, I need to stress on how road safety can map into creating a resilience toward extreme messaging. Since the simulation is populated by vulnerable youth, to prevent accidental radicalization, we, the Icons team, avoid the use of symbols, ideologically or visually, originate from radical or extreme groups. To make the simulation as effective as it is a tool for PCVE, we came up with a solution to solve the problem of accidental radicalization by using a projective technique where we conceal the apparent characteristic of a radical group through a benign group identity, the road safety movement, RSM. Next. Now we'll look into the model of the icon simulation. Next, we will divide the participants into two groups. Next, we introduce a simulation as simulated radical groups, the RSM, with an objective to recruit as many participants as possible within the runtime of the simulation. This group will be populated by scholars or experts who have experience in the study and the communicating with terrorists, foreign fighters, and also extreme individuals. Next, the RSM will be antagonized by another group consists of mentors coming from backgrounds that has relation to effective narrative, communication expert, content creators, reporters, and the likes. Next, the response group, which consists of participating individual, will work with the facilitator and the mentor in devising positive, alternative, and countering messaging to prevent RSM active recruitment. Next, the RSM will engage in radical messaging. Next, the target group are placed in the middle of the communication platform. Each of them will be given a role as an influencer, observing the event unfolds in the social media pages. Next, the pipeline for this communication among groups is the icons net. The layout of the Malaysian icons will be similar to a popular social media platform. Next, the communication model in icon simulation are shown here. Response group has direct contact with the target group, the same for the RSM. However, communication between the mentor and the target group is prohibited. Communication between the RSM and the mentor are also prohibited. Next, but who will be the target audience for the Malaysian icons? Next, the answer may be in the controversial article from the New Straits Time in 2017, where 402 names of school across Malaysia were leaked by a reporter, Haris Muhammad. These schools were identified by the government to have disciplinary and drug problems. Next. Next. And next. Here is a representation of Malaysia and the GIs that is, From this article, the possibility of using it as a ground truth to identify localities of vulnerable youth would be possible, even though this ground truth points to the year 2017. Here you can see the representation of the ratio of number of hotspot schools to the number of local school by state. A lighter color indicates a high ratio. A small bright speck on the east of Malaysia is Wilayah Persekutuan Labuan. Next. Next. And another next. Okay, thank you. Here is a representation of Malaysia and the GIS data structure that I will use to encode metrics to locate vulnerable youth in Malaysia. With the help of this ground truth from the 402 school names, I can investigate the condition of a district through 5 metrics that could correlate to less than admirable behavior of the students in the school. To do that, I would need, next. So the metric encompasses drivers relevant to the Malaysian radicalized youth, which includes economic status and performance, information porosity and availability, religiosity, education performance, and the distance of the school from the town, city, urban center. Next. I will do my best to have a virtual pilot testing by the end of March. Next slide, please. Can we go back, please? Thank you. So I'm working at my very best to have a virtual pilot testing by the end of March. Currently, we are calling youth to apply for participation in the pilot testing. Also, we are looking suitable candidates to be the role of mentors for this purpose and the usage of Malaysian Icon as a complete and tested simulation platform. Next, please. Thank you. Besides developing Malaysian icons with Icons team at Start, I was fortunate enough to design a simulation last year for the Youth Convention, Empowering Youth in ICVE 2020. Next. The simulation was called Attack Threats in Kuala Lumpur, where Malaysia was infiltrated by a radical group as a result of a resignation of the then Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. The simulation was formulaic, where for every 4 minutes, participants from 3 different bodies, the Royal Police, the Royal Army, and the EARU, Extremism Analytical Research Unit, must nominate 1 terrorist candidate based on their roles in the simulation. Each participant were given a name and asked to champion that name, where they have confidence on the role of this specific individual as the perpetrator for the ensuing attacks in Kuala Lumpur. However, the simulation purposely introduced tension between the groups, which makes information sharing difficult. The purpose of the simulation is to empower participants to make informed decisions in high tension situation, hence the 4 minutes interval, and to have them put aside differences and prejudice to come out with correct candidate names. 4 names were repeatedly given to participants. If all names were shared together, it would see the most likely perpetrator. Next, 2 iterations of the simulation was done. First in Terengganu. Next, please. Next, where 95% agreed that the simulation was empowering. Next, the second iteration was done in Malacca. Next, where 75% agreed that the simulation was empowering. However, the common comment that I get from the iteration in Malacca was that the simulation was a little bit confusing. Next, so I realize now that icons could have a huge impact to us, the researcher, the governing bodies, and the society. Malaysian icon specifically is a precursor to icon simulation for other Asian countries. It could help design effective messaging for PCVE and CVE. We'll have a preview to data for effective messaging and also a nationwide data that we can use to model youth susceptibility towards radical messaging. Next. Now I would like to shift your attention to my role as a GIS researcher. I was very new on GIS when I visited START. Dr. Marcus Boyd was kind enough to help find a good exercise and a good research topic for me for my stay in START and for many months to come. The problem faced by some researchers in START are the unknown perpetrators that populated the G name variables in the GTD. Without a definitive value, an unknown perpetrator could be part of a coordinated, aggressive terror attack. Dr. Marcus came up with a solution to solve the problem by looking into the co-location quotient of incidences, which states that the occurrence occurring close together are likely to instigate by a common actor. Co-location quotient is a GIS method, a newly GIS method rooted from the co-location quotient used in economics. The approach was looking into the problem spatially. Dr. Marcus was looking into how to validate findings from the co-location methods with another approach, triangulation. Thus, I introduced him and the team with the use of a simple Bayesian theorem that tackles the problem of unmasking unknown perpetrator using geospatial analysis. Next, to put this problem in context of Southeast Asia, here is an excerpt of attack in Southeast Asia from 1970 to 2018. Next, almost half of these attacks are done by unknown perpetrators. Next, I will show you today the theory that encompasses inferential GIS and how to solve problems such as uncovering unknown state. However, inferential next, please, thank you. So, however, inferential GIS technique that I will show you can be used to estimate state or unknown variables flexibly. We will use this box to visualize a space. I would couple this box with Tauber's first law of geography so that the occurrence close to each other suggests that it is closely related. I think I will invoke all 3 probability axioms to this box so that now it can represent a probability model. The metric of the probability values are the area in the box. We will refer to this box as a sample space. I then couple Bayes' theorem with the Tauber's first law of geography. As you can see at the bottom of the box, that's the structure of the Bayesian theorem or the formula for the Bayesian theorems. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I populated the sample space with coordinate from known terror attacks from the GTD data. Mind you, due to Tauber's second law of geography, I can say that this box can represent any localities in the globe, a country, a region, a district. I partitioned the sample space using objective methods or algorithm, for example, using Voronoi tessellation. Other methods such as clustering technique and support vector machine can be used as well. At this point, the box has been partitioned and the attack by unknown perpetrators are separated from being used to partition this sample space. Next, there are few terms in the Bayesian theorems under the box. The prior term, which I highlighted with the green olive color, represent belief. The belief is the partition that we have just constructed previously. It is now represented by the prior term in a form of a vector. The partitions are constructed using known group attacks. Next. The second term on the right-hand side of the Bayes theorem is a likelihood. It is often considered as an observation. Since we want to unravel unknown groups into the structure, we will populate the sample space with an unknown attacks clustering to represent the likelihood. Next, where we do multiplication operation between the distribution represented by the prior and also the likelihood, we will be using Hundermark multiplication. We will get a small sample space pointed by the olive green arrow in this diagram. From here, we have a new distribution. GI consists of 3 clusters, G4, G5, and G6. If a discrete solution or outcome is needed for this process, from this process, we can say that about half of GI or unknown group text by unknown group perpetrator is G4. It's likely that the unknown perpetrator is G4. Next. So now I need to communicate with you that as of now, next please. Okay. Yeah, I need to communicate with you as of now, this solution of using Bayes' theorem on purely spatial analysis has returned inconclusive result. Most of the prediction that I've used with Bayesian theorem produce an erroneous prediction. This is because using Werner tessellation eliminates some of the information on the structure of the clustering because we need to find centroid to construct the Werner tessellation. Another thing that we notice is that when we encounter some terror attack that has no clustering characteristic, but instead there are some attacks that has trajectory and this causes the clustering to be cross-sectioned by a series of attacks that is trajectory in nature and causes a non-linearity to the clustering. When I was in when I was in START, I laid out exhaustive solution to this problem. In this diagram, you can see that one of the solutions is a recursive method that uses filter. Also, when I was in STAR, Dr. Thomas Guerrieri suggested the use of hidden Markov chain, which is part of which is very similar to Markov assumption to uncover this perpetrator. As you know, filtering techniques uses the Bayes theorem under Markov assumption, where prediction can only be based on the current state of the process of the system or the system. This is relevant for dynamic motion. Also, as I stated in my insight just now, the use of Bayesian theorem spatially, the attacker more often follows a certain trajectory instead of a cluster. Hence, now I would like to soft introduce the Kalman filtering technique. It requires the use of time variable in the GTD. I prefer to use the event ID specific for the last digit of the number. The bigger the number suggests a layer event. Here we have a southern region of Thailand near Malaysian border. I would use an excerpt of the GTD to explain how Kalman filter would be the best solution. Next. The light circle represent attack by Runda Kumpulan Kecil. Next. The dark circle represent attack by separatists. Next. Here, the two lines that would describe the trajectory of the attack by the two groups. This line will be the prior part of the Kalman filtering technique or its prediction step. Here we will introduce two processes, hence two separate Kalman filters. We utilize this filter to help estimate if the attack by an unknown perpetrator can sustain the line of the prediction. If it is, there is a likelihood that this attack is perpetrated by the group that follows this line of trajectory. This diagram is just an ideal situation. However, the approach is the same. Get all of the terms for the common filter in hand, plug it in, plug in all the value, adjust their error matrix so that the line can be fit within the majority of the attack trajectory, and use nearby unknown perpetrator attack as the input step for the next prediction step. If two lines such as this, such as you can see here, intersect, the prediction would not collapse, much like the spatial Bayesian theorem technique, since the state's transition matrix would suggest a straight line instead of a curve. When you are acquainted with common filter algorithm, though, there is a term that requires control input, which is not valid for these processes. That is more valid for something that is mechanically controlled. So next slide, please. So I would like to reiterate that the use of technique I demonstrate here is not confined to the use of uncovering unknown perpetrator. Any state estimation problem can be benefited from these inferential techniques. I would summarize the importance of the development of inferential GIS. First, it would be the precursor to computational PCVE. Second, the use of inferential GIS would lead to informed and data-driven decision-making and policy-making. For example, targeted deployment of Malaysian icons. Third, it is a multidisciplinary approach to complex systems and problems. It involves collaboration avenues between people diplomatically and academically. I, for example, comes from an engineering background, and I'm using common filters to uncover unknown perpetrators in the GTD dataset. So the fourth importance of the inferential GIS is the great alternative to the fieldwork. Observation and inference from inferential GIS are done in the lab and not in the field, hence saving time and sometimes life. Next, I'm eager to develop inferential GIS as my future way forward. The use of Bayesian filtering techniques for PCVE is almost non-existing, and I would like to pioneer it, particularly on other approaches that I have not touched in this presentation. For example, the use of non-Markovian processes, semi-Markovian processes, and also a Bayesian network, where we can fuse more than two variables into a solution. All of these can be used to effectively approach vulnerable groups before they are influenced by malevolent narratives or messaging, and how this approach can park icons at the most suitable localities, making the activity of PCVE lean, effective, and efficient. Thank you so much. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Hafiz. You just put a whole bunch of information in 20 minutes. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
It does not seem that there are any questions at the moment from the participants. Just as a reminder to the attendees, there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And so if you have questions for any of the presenters, please do enter them there. And if you're still composing a question for Hafiz, we can also come back to it in a bit. A couple of seconds. So the next presentation is going to look a little bit different from the presentations thus far in the symposium. Due to some instability in internet connectivity, the next presentation is recorded. The author is here and can take questions, but was just concerned with video bandwidth and things like that, and so sent the recording of his presentation. Oh, I just have a question for Hafiz. Since we have a few minutes, I will go ahead and ask that. This comes from Greg Lopez. It's good to see your name on the computer, Greg. So he mentions it's quite a bit to digest. Just wondering why you use secondary data and not government data.
Oh, actually, I am using governmental data fused together with the secondary data. I think Greg is referring to the list of schools. Mm-hmm. So that data came from a report, a leak report, but the list of schools officially registered is also being used together with the list of school being leaked by the newspaper. But the newspapers list of school are tagged with problematic reputation. Those are the schools that has problematic reputation. So we can use that as an indicator or as a sort of like a ground truth to have like condition in district so that we can research on that condition, specific condition that sort of like mm, trigger this school or the student in the school to behave as they are behaved. Right, I think that's it, maybe, or answer, maybe.
Thank you, Hafiz. And so, as I mentioned, the next presentation is from Nikki Cardenas, but it is recorded. So, Aaron, I will ask you to start that presentation.
A pleasant day, everyone. I am Nikki Cardenas from the Philippines. It is my honor and privilege to be joining this prestigious event, International Symposium on Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. Allow me to share to you my research findings titled, my research paper titled, Analysis on Counter-Violent Extremism Strategies in Southeast Asia, Asian Centrality on Regional Peace Building and Security. Allow me to share to you the findings. For the introduction, the United Nations Security Council underscored recently the urgent need for comprehensive approach to countering the spread of terrorism and violent extremism to address the threats of international peace and security posed by foreign terrorist fighters. The United Nations Counterterrorism Center report in 2019 highlighted the project on prevention of violent extremism through youth empowerment in different countries like Jordan, Libya, Morocco, and Tunisia. More so support selected member states in North Africa and Middle East to empower young men and women to become key actors in preventing violent extremism, mainstreaming CVE through non-formal and informal education, and strengthening cooperation with online youth communities and the media. Importantly, the Global Terrorism Database provides recent trends in terrorist attacks, killings, including perpetrators, deaths, including perpetrators and victims, according to Miller in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, reports show that there are more than 9,600 terrorist attacks and killed more than 22,980 people, including perpetrators and victims. Meanwhile, there are 8,500 terrorist attacks around the world, including perpetrators and victims in 2019, according to Mirror report in 2020. Significantly, total number of terrorist attacks showed a decline between 2018 and 2019 worldwide. Terrorist violence remains heavily concentrated in 5 countries, such as Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq, India, and Nigeria. And noteworthy to share, Philippines ranks the highest among the Southeast Asian nations with a total of 464 terrorist attacks and a total of 396 people killed, according to Miller in 2020. There were also some recorded important terrorist attacks in India, different terrorist attacks in different cities from India, Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand, with reports of fatalities and injuries. Noteworthy that the United Nations Counterterrorism Center pursued different projects, such as, for example, the Asia Stripe, strengthening resilience to violent extremism in Asia. These actually aim to develop and implement national action plans enhance the role of law enforcement actors in preventing violent extremism in collaboration with non-government actors and strengthen local resilience at risk communities. Also, it is important to note that UNCCT has completed a project, Social Media Investigations for Southeast Asia. These actually aim to enhance the skills of Southeast Asian officials in relation to the exploitation of social media and the internet to counter the foreign terrorist fighters phenomenon and violent extremism. Noteworthy, the role of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations was founded by the founding fathers Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand on August 8, 1967, which recognized most recently the urgent need to enhance counterterrorism cooperation. Ziegler also emphasized that Al-Qaeda has established linkages in Southeast Asian region as follows: Abu Sayyaf Group in the Philippines, Lashkar Jundala in Indonesia, Kumpulan Mujahidin Malaysia in Malaysia, Jemaah Islamiyah in Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Attacks in Jakarta, Indonesia in 2016, and the siege of Marawi, Philippines in 2017 sounded alarm among Asian leaders to address terrorism and violent extremism in the region. Daesh or the ISIS utilized similar model as Al-Qaeda, that is, establishing international networks and recruiting local actors in Southeast Asia to carry out their goals, especially in recruiting university students, teenagers. Here are some pictures to show the attacks in Jakarta in 2016. You can see that in broad daylight, terrorists attacked the Jakarta. Also, the Battle of Marawi in 2017. Shattered houses, buildings were bombed by terrorist extremists. That is why the Asian centrality is needed, urgently needed in this time where there is an escalating or increasing recruitment of teenagers and university students in the region. There are key instruments by Asian Declaration, Work Program, Convention, and as well action plans, ministerial meetings that you can see here from 1997 Asian Declaration to reports and ministerial meeting action plans in 2017. Literature review shows that most previous studies focus on strategies for countering violent extremism, practices standards, and strengthen strategic cooperation between nations and regions. Other research studies focus on how terrorists utilize the mass media and how mass media has been used strategically for countering violent extremism. But there are gaps in research that reveal that there is an scant literature for empirical basis on preventing and countering violent extremism. Since majority of literature in the field comprises commentary and critique. Atran in 2004 and Krelinstein in 2009 argue that there is a dire need for multifaceted approaches for countering violent extremism. That's why this study analyzed strategies for countering violent extremism in Southeast Asia and its implications to Asia's centrality on regional peace building and security. The methodology I used here are as follows: quantitative, descriptive, factorial approach. I use descriptive statistics and inferential statistics to analyze the validity of Filipino university college students, especially freshmen, perceptions toward countering violent extremism strategies in Southeast Asia. I used research instrument. My self-made research questionnaire is a 10-item Likert scale based on Ziegler's 2016 study titled counter-narratives for countering violent extremism in Southeast Asia. The instrument has undergone 4 stages of development. First, I patterned it based on Zara Seeger's 2016 study. Second, content validity from experts. Third, self-administration of the self-made questionnaire for reliability tests. And lastly, construct validity for factorial analysis, especially exploratory factorial analysis. The sample population, the sampling technique I used in this study is purposive sampling technique and phase validity for pre-testing of the self-made questionnaire. A new set of 200 Filipino college university students participated in this study for the final conduct of the study from 2 Manila-based schools. I use SPSS version 22 for statistical treatment of the data collected. Results show that reliability of the self-made questionnaire has an internal consistency of conduct alpha of 0.82, which actually implies that there is a high internal consistency in all of the items in the questionnaire. Results of descriptive statistics in general for all items revealed a range of mean scores from 4.05 up to 4.48. The results implied respondents have high level of confidence on strategic practices to counter violent extremism. Respondents got the lowest mean score of 4.05 and standard deviation of 0.93 on item 4, Q4, but still within the high level confidence for verbal interpretation, which is actually on countering violent extremism approach through the use of radio stations. On the other hand, respondents got the highest mean score of 4.48 on item 9 or Q9, with standard deviation of 0.78 equivalent to high level of confidence, which is the school-based approach to counter violent extremism through the use of effective information, communication, and technology such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and other types of social media to prevent university students and teenagers in joining terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and Daesh. So the table shows the items, each item I used to analyze the freshman university students' perceptions on different aspects on Q1, focusing on countering violent extremism approach in Southeast Asia by family-based counseling on Q2, interreligious dialogue on Q3 or item 3, family-based and community-based programs. On item 4, use of radio stations, for which in here we can see 4.05 still falls under the ambit of high level of confidence among university students, teenagers. And Q5, school-based counseling. And Q6, interfaith and intrafaith dialogue. On item 7, inter-ethnic narratives. On item 8, local families or communities in resolving and finding solutions of local conflicts. On item 9, effective use of information, communication, and technology, which actually scored the highest, 4.48, to the use of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And on Q10, developing localized medium as a central tenet for Muslim identity. What do these results actually mean? For the reliability analysis, the Cronbach's alpha revealed highly acceptable internal consistency in general with a total range of 0.796 to up to 0.818 rather. In other words, these results implied that all item statements of the self-questionnaire are highly reliable and valid. To establish construct validity, I use the following method: extraction method, principal component analysis, rotation method, varimax with Kaiser normalization, with rotation converged in 5 iterations that revealed 3 factorial loadings. Results of factorial analysis reveal that there are threefold determining factors to counter effectively violent extremism among Asian youth as follows. First, the family-based counseling strategy. Second, school-based counseling strategy. And third, religion-based counter-narratives, including communications strategies, counter-narratives. Therefore, this study concluded that there is a dire need for Asian countries to assert its centrality in strengthening political security partnership through long-term strategic dialogue and multilateral cooperation approach, both international and regional, through sharing best practices and strategies to prevent university students in joining extremist groups, because these extremist groups actually recruit foreign terrorist fighters. Specifically, there is an increasing recruitments in the Southeast Asia. And most targeted are the teenagers and the youth in Southeast Asia. Thank you for listening. So here's my contact number. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. It is
Thank you, Nikki. So we have a question for you about, and it comes from James Francis Maradora, who's in the audience. How conclusive are the results of the survey? Could we expect different results if the survey is conducted in conflict-affected areas or different areas from where you did the initial pilot of the survey? I'll hand it over to you to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Amy, and thank you for that question. How conclusive it is contextualized in the Philippine context. And I guess this is high time because empirical basis is rarely investigated in Southeast Asian region. I guess if the instrument, this is actually an initial study. So this is, although I did a pilot test on that through face validity technique, I have 50 students answering first prior to the final conduct of the study. So there was a pilot testing and content validity. I did a content validity from experts, checking all the grammars and the construction. And I sought for students' perceptions, how they understood the terminologies and so on and so forth. And prior to the self-administration, prior to answering the questions, I actually asked them to if they have questions for clarifications. And how conclusive, I guess it depends on the context, because there are some, actually based on the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, reports show that in Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, and in the Philippines, and some other parts of the region have shown that there is an increasing or escalating recruitment of teenagers or university students. And I guess it depends on how students or university teenagers perceive this kind of phenomenon being recruited, because the role comes in the results and findings. You have seen that there are three major threefold factorial loadings through factorial loading, which I actually validated through reliability tests first. How reliable it is, result of Cronbach alpha. I ran it through SPSS, so the data I collected, because it was a Likert scale 1 to 5. 5 is the strongest for strongly agree or agree, 3 neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. So the students' perception were rated by a Likert scale, and then I entered it to Excel to SPSS, and then the raw data were run through the SPSS, and the results show that the reliability test Cronbach alpha is 0.8, which actually signifies high reliability test. However, I even confirmed it through construct validity, because I wanted to know what exactly are the factors, how they perceive these kinds of strategies to be effective, how to combat recruitment of teenagers. And it showed that based on the students' perceptions, because if you have seen, I use purposive sampling technique. This is an initial study, and because of pandemic, I was not able to conduct the confirmatory exploratory analysis, but I was able to conduct a exploratory factorial analysis. So there's a difference, and this is there can be a sequel of the study to get sampling techniques. And for the whole Philippines, for example, I may get 1,200 respondents with 95% level of confidence and 0.05 margin of error to check how far can it go. And perhaps this would also call for collaboration with other countries like Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia and Malaysia. There were actually reports in Indonesia and Malaysia, according to the UN Office of the Drugs and Crimes, the recruitment of fighters, especially on women and children in Malaysia, if I remember it right, it's 31% women and children who among FTS, foreign fighters who traveled to Iraq and Syria from October 2012 to 2017. And evidence showed that also in Malaysia, there are 29% who among teenagers and women traveled to Iraq and in Iraq and Syria to join and participate as perpetrators, to be trained as terrorists. And what I could say is that how conclusive, it depends on the context, and it depends on the sampling technique. On this case, I guess the purposive sampling technique can justify in a way that there is a reliability test and there is a construct validity. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. And for other attendees, if you're in Malaysia or Indonesia, it sounds like there was just an offer for partnership and joint study extended. So that would be a wonderful outcome for this event. Another question from Indu. Do you think that a counseling strategy is an effective approach for those youths who have been perhaps brainwashed by radical groups? And is this type of approach effective enough in the Philippines to curb extremist violence? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, great question again. Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess it's very crucial, the role of family to help the teenagers, especially the youth. However, most victims of recruitment here, especially Marawi results, in my discussion and results in my full manuscript, I cited there the Manila Times reported actually that most of the marginalized sectors in Mindanao, the Mauti group and the Abu Sayyaf group, who claim a strong connection with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, Daesh, actually recruited these marginalized, and they have dowry, they pay for money. And the imam or the priest in the local community actually recruit these youngsters, these teenagers. Most of them are males and some are females. But reports showed that, based on evidence, according to Manila Times in 2018, that there was an increasing number of students being recruited by these terrorist fighters, especially the ISIS. And in our recently, ASEAN actually declared there are two waves in Southeast Asia, according to Guranatna 2018. First is in the 1990s and 2000. So the first wave is the Al-Qaeda wave-centric threat, but then they did not much focus on. And in the ASEAN centrality, you can see documents, and it was founded, the ASEAN was founded in 1967, but only that they have declared to counter crimes, transnational crimes in 1997, but then they declared other statements and produced some statements, declaration, action plans against countering terrorism only in the 2020, 2000, and most focus in 2017 because of the rise of attacks. In Malaysia, there was actually a Mobivar, I think it's in somewhere in Punchong, if I'm not mistaken. In 2016, there was an attack there. And in Indonesia, Jakarta, as I've cited, and this brought ASEAN leaders, especially our president, actually declared, used the draconian strategy, President Duterte, to combat this ISIS in the region, especially in Mindanao. So there was like a one-year martial law, and they battled and lost. There were actually reports through television networks that there were minors involved fighting against the military. So I guess when it comes to understanding the context of counseling, there comes in also the crucial role of our education, even the policymakers, the stakeholders to come in especially among marginalized, because they are victims, most especially they cannot, and parents would say in the report, based on the interview of journalists, they would say that they are actually caught up in the middle, and if they would deny, the offer of their son joining, being recruited as a foreign terrorist. It was said that either they will be put in danger, their lives at stake, or would they let their sons join the join as a terrorist fighter and get a 100,000 pesos as in return for dowry, and would assure that they will be sustained by the terrorists. So financing, another variable here is that the financing of terrorist fighters is crucial as to how far, to what extent, another variable. So counseling in that way requires also school-based counseling at the same time, based on the results and findings. The Filipino perceptions, Filipino students' perceptions are actually 16 to 18, but they have this kind of perception already that not only family, but in collaboration with school and religion. Taking note that Philippines is the only Catholic country in Asia, I guess there is an impact why they perceive this way, that the religion has the capacity also to help other than the schools, but there is a significant role of education as well to enlighten students, because most of the terrorists, those who join, are radical thinkers here. Some of the students here in the public universities, state universities, being televised, joining as activists, from protesters to activists. They join actually the New People's Army and other extremist groups here. So that's it, I guess.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nikki, for those answers and the interest of giving other presenters also their time. There are some other questions, and we will come back to those at the end if there is time. But for now, I would like to hand the floor over to Minthang for his presentation.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So for time managing, I will go. Just we'll go to next point and next PowerPoint. Yeah. Yeah, we all know that Myanmar is religion pluralism or ethnic pluralism. So in Constitution of Myanmar in 2008, there was not mentioned minority or ethnic, but it is say in Burmese Tainda. And there are 8 major ethnics and other ethnic minorities. In the government of Myanmar recognized that there are 135 ethnic cities in Myanmar, but they mostly the majority as 8 ethnic groups, what I have shared here. And in picture, we can see ethnic minority, and also population of Myanmar are like 53 million in according to 2014 census. And 2008 Constitution, abuse of religion is prohibited, of course, but you will see in many news and many hot issue in Myanmar through religion and abusing of religion. Next PowerPoint is, yeah. When we see background of Myanmar, historical, religion and conflict, first we'll see that what Burmese history record is that Burma is one kind of the majority ethnic group. They said, here is the picture. We can see that is Anorata. It is 1044. They said he nationalized Buddhism among Burma ethnics, not other ethnic like hill region, only plain region of particularly ethnic group of Burma and some other few ethnic group. It does not include like after 1848, after independence. Before independence among Burma, only he Burmanizing or Buddhism was nationalized among Burma ethnic groups. And 2018 is recognized religion here. 2014 census according to Burmese, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, and Hinduism, and special status of Buddhism. Because special status of Buddhism was like Buddhism is majority religion, so Buddhism will be rule Burma, and it is favoritism of Buddhism in the country. Next. Yeah, here is Buddhism, Buddhist nationalism colonial periods. Under colonial periods, there was not today like Union of Burma. There are different ethnic groups. We all know those who are studying in Burma. Hill region are not include like today Union of Burma. Hill region are include after independence only. Before independence, there was Buddhist young men, Buddhist young men Buddhist association. It was called like after YMCA, Young Men Christian Association. Because of these kinds of nationalism, later they recognized that General Council of Sangha Committee, that means GCCS, also established in 1920. It was fully like Buddhist Burmese nationalism arise after colonial, under colonial periods. And they against British colonial and other colonial, and most of them are Buddhist monks like Wisira and Utama. Utama is ethnic Arkhan, and Siasan. Most of them are Buddhist. It does not include any other ethnic groups in Burma. And the rise of Burma CEO, that means with the Burma Association in 1930s. Before independence, around 1930 or now 1935, there was like anti-India or both Hindu and Muslim movement, because colonial periods, most of landlord are businessmen are Indian. So Burmese, they don't want Indian people to influence in among Burma ethnics. So they anti-India, and they even set out many of Indian in around 1930 and 1935. Many of Indian people left Burma and went to India and even in Bangladesh. Next PowerPoint. Yeah, Buddhist nationalism after colonialism. Here, after British colonial periods, we'll see Burma get independent 1948. Before 1948, they already make Constitution of 1947. It was the first prime minister or president was UNU. According Constitution, everything we see, the class of Aung San and UNU ideology on Union of Burma. But however, they see 2048 Constitution, they change 2074, even in 2008, most of Constitution was based on Buddhist, majority of Buddhist nationalism based on Constitution. And other ethnic religion was totally divided. Here we'll see 7 states and 7 regions. Before it was say that division, but right now they changed into region. States are mostly Hill ethnic people, and the region are most of Burma Buddhist majority people who are living in plain area. That is clearly we can see in Burmese how they divided state and region. Many of people, you will not see state is only 1 state, 2 state, but here is region and state is differences. It itself is discrimination, or we'll say dividing among ethnics in Burma. Yeah, next PowerPoint. Yeah, ethnic nationalism from 1947 to right now, present time, you will see most of the leaders in Burma are Burma ethnics. None of ethnic hill region are not presented. See, first Unu, second Newun, Tan Shui, Ting Sing, Ting Chok, right? President is U women. All are Burma. Non-Burma ethnics are not yet president in Burma. That means it is one way or other way, ethnic nationalism is highly presented in Burma. After military took power in last many decades, all government neglect or prohibited, suppress or non-Burma and non-Buddhist culture, religion, language, literature, and so on. They even started military, even ethnic minority language and culture has been prohibited apart from Burma, and which is Burma is now right now using as official language in Burma. But foreigner or many of people, they know the Burma and Burma. They thought that Burma is like one country and country name, but Burma is ethnic, one kind of ethnic group. We can differentiate it. Yeah, next. Religion nationalism. Here, after independence, religion nationalism is very much prevalent in Burma. Here, one of PowerPoint I saw here in front of the church, there was pagoda, Buddhist pagoda. Here is the reason is why they built back, not the back side one is the church, front side one is like Buddhist pagoda. One, this is ethnic hill region, not Burma. This Burma ethnic Buddhist society. This was hill ethnic region and Christian society. It was when they clean the church ground. They are cleaning the church before building the church, and they found that like stone of like Buddhist head statues of the head of Buddhist, and they thought that because of it's not good, will show to the government or the elder leader in the society, in community. And they saw that because of this head was Buddhist, this place is Buddhist place. That's why the head of this statue is under here in the earth of this Bennett. So we will take this part and the church will take other part. This is what in front side of the church. And how under military rule, see under the picture, Buddhist teacher was some kinds of bow down in one person. This was my own place, Chin Hill, western part of Burma. It was very beautiful mountains and many tourists are come. Most of the Chin people are purely Christian. But how they took these Buddha statues into that place and hill mountains in our own places, like some kinds of Buddhist statues or Buddhist image was carried in different parts of the country in Burma. That one also showed that Burmanization or Buddhism is the powerful religion in the country, and other religions are marginalized or discriminated or assimilated by Buddhist majority people in Burma. Yeah, next. Yeah, here is, we can see here one old man is handing what traditional dress, which I wear here this morning. This is my own place, my own township. The backside was the Christian cross. It was contribution of Japanese in 2002. It was demolished by military government in 2001. It is right. This year it was 16th anniversary of this abolition of this cross. This was in my own place. Christianity is none of Buddhist was in my own place and not exist. My own place are fully Christianity, but military and Buddhism demolish and destroy this cross, and no more this cross in this place. Another one is where I was standing. Is what 1947 Pinlong agreement were established in all ethnic people and Burma majority in this Pinlong. This is memorial stone of Pinlong, where I stand in front of. At the next, from backside, when we took the picture. See, backside is Buddhist pagoda. This was historical place of Burma, Burmese history. Because of Pinlong Agreement, Union of Burma was formed by all ethnic nationality. But long time in front of this Pinlong memorial stone, see, Buddhist pagoda, huge Buddhist pagoda was built by military. It was some kinds of not giving importance in this memorial stone of where Burmese Union of Burma was formed through all ethnic group and establishing this memorial stone. Instead of that, they built in front of this memorial stone Buddhist pagoda. That means everywhere many people came for tourists and all, but they are not seeing this memorial stone. They see Buddhist pagoda. They mean one kind of this was this historical place was assimilating or one way or another way Burmanizing. That is what we can see. Next PowerPoint, please. Yeah, here's the stone was very long. This was in hill western northern part of Burma, Kachin state. We call, you will know many Kachin state are very ethnic armed and Burma military was fighting for many long years. This was traditionally very giving importance for this stone. Before it was 2004, and they built here like dragon head and like snake. That stone was ethnic people was very giving importance for this stone. But after military came and they built like dragon head or snake. And 2014, see, upper one was pagoda or Buddhist, another one was like snake or dragon head. See how they ethnic people giving importance for all their own traditional things and that, but they are Burmanizing or Buddhizing, like Buddhist nationalism are very strong and they all created. And these local people cannot say anything here. This was built by military and Buddhist people. That is what we can see. Before 2004 and 2014, see, first one is full of stone, beautiful stone. And second one is here, Buddhist pagoda and like snake and big dragon head. Next. Yeah. Buddhism is very much majority in various prevail in Burma. All Burmese culture, religion, politics, everything is like influenced by Buddhists. But one way of this was like not ethnic Burma, like Buddhist region. It was hill ethnic like Kachin state. The river, nearby the river under pagoda, we see river, big stone, very beautiful stone as there. But they create like Buddhist pagoda temple, and they make after creating this, it was Burma city. City means pagoda of not Chong means school, not school. They changed the name of this place. It was traditionally the river and the stone where like the river size of big stone was there. But still they say that after creating of this temple, it was Burma. Buddhist, like not mean like evil, or not school mean like evil, or what to say, Buddhist school. They changed. That's why the Burmanizing is very much prevail in Burma. Yeah, thank you. 5 minutes. Yeah. Next. Yeah, here is race of Buddhist nationalism. We all know 2014 like Rohingya or Muslim and Buddhist, and they make here all population restriction of religion, mostly population control and intermarriage law and conversion law and monogamy law is what all for Muslim. But it's not only effect of Muslim, it's also effect of minority people. If you have question, I will answer later on this population control and interfaith marriage law and conversion law and monogamy law, but I will not go for detailing. Just if you have any question, I will explain after QA. Yeah, next. Here continuing. Here, Buddhist, this was my own place where Buddhist monk teaching in our Chin ethnic group in Kamplet and in Chin state. It was said that Natala is ministry affair of ministry donating ministry border affair. It was fully Buddhist school, which was ethnic people are poor and they study here and all Buddhist scripture, Buddhist religion, and they worship of monk or pagoda. All of that was contribution of Ministry of Religion afraid from the government. But none of Christian or minority have not chance to get these kinds of fee or expense from the government. But here is Buddhist is also mostly education, but it's also giving students from study. Those who are study from here, they are giving a chance for job or education or anything after graduating. But others who are not study from that, they have no chance for getting job or anything like them. They are more opportunity than others. That is what the government have nationalizing. And also here, statues of Aung San. Aung San is good for national leader in Burma, hero we say, but it does not good for all ethnic hill people. They create 360 millions for just for this erection of Aung San statue. It's not only it was in Naypyidaw last time they already opening ceremony. It was not only in Burma area but also ethnic area. It was carrying statues of Aung San to everywhere, and every ethnic people have against of statues of Aung San to build in their own place. This was right now even many issue in our Chin state also, even in Kaya, Moon. Every time this was against by ethnic minority in the hill region to build or to erect statues of General Aung San in Burma. Next. Yeah, that is conclusion. This was Myanmar pluralism. So every necessary of respect diversity among only not of group of religion, but also all aspect of life. Culturally speaking, Myanmar is diverse. Therefore, diverse is the nature of human. It is Buddhist majority and religion play a very important role in inspiring charity, curiosity, and providing cultural code and symbol that emphasize unity of humankind. But here we know some of like many people will hear that Uratu, they say that Buddhist Bin Laden. That is totally against of Muslim. And 2016, Myanmar is the 1962, Myanmar has poorest country in the world. It's in fact because of the government operation of crucial and human debt, violation of basic human rights and treaty of various conventions. Therefore, peaceful society and there must be equality and respect of values of others. Then only Myanmar will be, not only in Myanmar, even in the world will have peace. Even Myanmar people will do not like ethnic KIO, Kachin Independent Ethnic EO and Tamro was fighting in last year. Many people, NGO and many youth leadership are advocate for internal displaced people and war area. Many youth leaders demonstrate in various cities to stop violence in Myanmar. It can be also seen that no one like hatred, violence in society. Peace is necessary for all people of Myanmar and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Min, for that presentation. I am actually going to ask a question because
Yes.
A lot of my academic background is actually in ethnic conflict. So
yes,
this is, and I was, you know, a few years back, there was a lot of excitement and hope for how things could potentially be changing in Myanmar. A lot of optimism about the prospects for ethnic and other types of reconciliation and democratization, et cetera.
yes.
We're now a few years past that optimism. What do you think the prospects are for this interethnic reconciliation and further democratization, where you would see more equality of rights between members of different ethnic groups? Is there anything that gives you hope for positive change in the coming years?
Yeah, after this reform, some kinds of hope are given, but one way or other, when we see in the politically or ethnically, one party like NLD has too much, what to say, power, and they are not much border of ethnic party and democracy. They only NLD will power in government and they will control it. And the people have to obey what NLD have to do, NLD is doing. I'm not much concerned about other ethnic party in politically. That means even if they win, if they are not consider other ethnic party importantly, equally, and their voice, it will not be like what we think. It will not be like more democracy. Way will not be easy. It will be some kinds of stuck. And even in Pinlong conference, they are doing, but many people are not coming because of their policy. That also too much of giving long time for this democratization in Burma, and this will be some kinds of difficulty will be still in Burma. Yeah. Sorry, can I hear?
Let me unmute myself. We are now going it's time to move on to the final presenter in this panel. Abu Bakr Usman, I will let you introduce yourself and give your presentation now.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, the panelists, and of course the other participant or attendant in this noble gathering or noble conference. My name, of course, is Abu Bakr Uthman, and I'm presenting on my behalf and my co-researcher, Sarah Hamad Al-Quraini. And our topic is titled Brethren in Terror, Martin ISIS and Boko Haram's Digital Campaigns. Okay, next, please. Okay, let me just give some background of what this is all about. Of course, for the people who have been or who are interested in terrorism and extremism, we know that in recent years there has been some effort from researchers, particularly in trying to establish a common pattern among movements that are usually called global jihadis. Among these, of course, we have Boko Haram and ISIS, two of the most notoriously known type of this movement. And something that became very interesting about these two movements was back in 2014, Boko Haram announced it, or declared its allegiance to ISIS. From that moment on, many researchers, analysts, and media people have been trying really to establish a common, or to think that these two movements are the same in terms of their ideologies, objectives, and methodologies. So for this reason, it is really important and it is very significant that we take a look, or a closer look, at these two movements in terms of their ideologies, approach, and objectives, and see whether there is really those common identity between these two movements, as we assume, or as we usually presume. Both these two movements, they use some form of media or some form of social media in trying to get their message across, in trying to promote and trying to advance their ideologies and what they stand for. So the aim of this study is just to look at the campaigns of these two movements. Boko Haram is known for releasing video messages, while ISIS, of course, is more advanced in that sense, as it usually send messages on Twitter and things like that. Although, of course, I must make some clarifications here. I'm not really going to look into Twitter messages. I'm more interested, or we're more interested in looking at the video messages that are usually accompanied in IC's Twitter messages that it sent. Next, please. Okay, thank you. So the relationship between ISIS and Boko Haram is very important in this context. We need to understand, of course, the relationship between these two movements. Of course, Boko Haram has been in existence far longer, or I mean, much earlier than ISIS. ISIS is more recent is just came into existence very much recently, back I mean, at the beginning of the decade that has just ended. However, because of the IC's nature and the notoriety that or the fame that it gathered, and the resources that it has under its control, and so many other things, then Boko Haram started actually to fail, or many other movements like Boko Haram started to identify themselves with ISIS or to affiliate themselves with ISIS. That is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened with Boko Haram. Boko Haram has been in existence for quite a long period of time. However, in 2014, it announced that it is from that moment on, it was going to be affiliated to ISIS, and ISIS welcomed that development. It was very happy for it, and I mean, it from that moment on, it declared Boko Haram it is West African, or it is Maghreb state. Many analysts, of course, have commented on this particular unholy union. Some of them actually, they saw that already there was some influence after Boko Haram announced its allegiance with ISIS. For example, back in 2014, Boko Haram kidnapped over 270 schoolgirls, which, according to one of the analysts, he said is already an influence of ISIS for what it has done to the Yazidi women before then, or back in the days. And of course, also there are some notable improvement in the production, or in the activities of Boko Haram after it affiliated itself with ISIS. So we started to see more improvement in the type of videos that Boko Haram was producing, and those kind of background music that it put on in order to appeal to the emotion of its listeners or its audience, and many other things. Even the quality of the videos suddenly improved from what we used to know before. Next, please. All right, so before moving forward, let me just throw some methodological note here. First of all, this is a qualitative study, purely qualitative, and we use reflective thematic analysis approach, which has been proposed and recommended by Brown and Clark and other authors as well. And for the type of materials that we rely or we base this study on, video messages from Boko Haram, and ISIS Arabic Twitter campaigns from, of course, ISIS. We followed actually a certain pattern in collecting this data, or the data from both ISIS and from Boko Haram as well. As for Boko Haram, of course, I mean, as for ISIS, it is slightly difficult in terms of tracking these videos, because there has been online monitoring of activities, of extremist activities. Therefore, it is these kind of messages, they don't really stay that long online. So mostly after ISIS posts these kind of messages, usually they're taken down immediately. So it becomes really difficult to track. However, we try to follow some trending hashtags, usually that show sign of ISIS, or that maybe the message is looking more like an ISIS message. And then we find tweets that usually, when we trace them, we'll find those kind of campaigns. So once we find the campaign, then we will download it immediately before it is taken down. As for Boko Haram, of course, they release these video messages. Sometimes they share them themselves. However, after, of course, the social media, extremist media activities has been has been monitored, or after the monitoring of this of social media activities of this type of movement, then it becomes very difficult. So what Boko Haram usually do is to after producing these video messages, it will send this kind of video messages to some media organizations, or they will communicate with some journalists, and then this journalist will be the one releasing this type of video messages. So both data, because they are not really originally in English language, so after collecting them, then we transcribe the data first, transcribe it into writing, and then translate all of it into English. It is quite, it is a huge amount of data, of course, because imagine we collected 23 video message, 20 campaigns from ISIS, and 23 video messages from Boko Haram. So the data after transcribing is quite huge, and we have to, it's very rich as well. So there are quite a lot of things actually that can be extracted from this data. So can you, okay, please, next. Okay, so I'm just going to summarize some of the findings that we have managed to make in relation to the analysis of the video messages. So let me begin with ISIS first. After going through these video messages, we try actually to establish some common pattern or some themes. We extract some things from the data itself. From ISIS digital campaigns, we managed to identify 4 different major themes. One is religion, and then specific messages to some identified audiences, honoring dead members, and recruitment and call to jihad. Can you push, please? So, can you press that? Okay, good. Thank you. So, when it comes to religion, we found that ISIS usually claim to be working and to be doing all that it is doing in the name of establishing or implementing Sharia. So it is trying to establish a caliphate, and then this caliphate will be implementing Sharia. That is usually something that is very common in ISIS video messages. Next, please. Okay, all right. And then, of course, it usually tries to show that it is a godly organization, organization or movement or group of people who are really very keen, or who can be identified, or who can be called godly or something like that. So they try to show that they are taking care of orphans, and then they try also to be showing that they are giving zakah and all these kind of things, and they emphasize, or they talk a lot about this kind of hello, sorry, is someone talking? All right. Okay, so let me just continue. So yes, and it also talk a lot about observing some religious right, like for example, Eid sacrifice, and so many religious rights that usually by looking at that or by listening to that, you will think that yes, this movement actually, or this group of people are really genuine religious organization. Next, please. And using religious, using religious argument. Usually ISIS will try to disown fellow Muslims, or try, or in maybe something that is more popular, they try to engage in what we know as takfirism. So they will declare other people or other Muslims kuffar, especially other notable people within the Muslim world. Next, please. And when it comes to can you press, please? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When it comes to when it comes to honoring dead members, we find that ISIS is using these campaigns in order to honor its fallen heroes. So it will talk a lot about these fallen heroes. Our interpretation of this is that by doing that, of course, ISIS is trying to attract more people, or showing people that it doesn't really abandon or forsake those kind of fallen heroes, those who sacrifice their life for the sake of movement. So it's a strategy also in trying to attract and trying to appeal to more members, to more recruit, or to more potential recruit. All right, next. And then it will use, of course, these video messages in trying to declare martyrdom. So those people that have fallen, or those members that have, for the sake of the movement or for the sake of fighting for the movement, they've fallen, especially those who have carried out some high-profile attacks, like suicide bombing. So usually, ISIS will use this video, these campaigns in declaring this people martyrs. So this is also something that we find so frequent within the campaigns. Okay, next, please. All right, so when it comes to, this is another major aspect or another major purpose of ISIS using these campaigns, of course, to recruit and to call people to jihad. So what we mean here is that ISIS usually will use the campaigns to try, as you can see in the excerpt here, it will try to attract people, to call people to join the movement and to sacrifice their lives. So, but it is one thing to be a member of this kind of movement or to be a sympathizer of this kind of movement, and it is quite another to sacrifice or to give your life for the sake of their cause. So that is one thing. So because of that, then we find that, of course, it will call those that probably are existing members already, or maybe they are sympathetic towards the movement. They will call them to commit their lives for, to commit their lives for jihad. And of course, then they try also to recruit. Next. Okay, next one. I already explained that one. Okay, yes. So yeah, and usually it will use these campaigns for intimidation, to intimidate other people or people that it identifies. For example, in the excerpt here, the example that I provided here, or we provided here, you can see that it is using the campaigns to intimidate the Egyptian Christians. This came immediately after the Beatrice church bombing, that which was some years back. So after that, of course, it will produce this kind of messages to scare these people or to intimidate them and to issue threat against them, so that, of course, they ISIS find it its own way, and these people probably back down. And of course, it will use, okay, next, please. It will use this to defame, to defame some high-profile people, especially religious people in some Muslim countries. And the government officials, of course, government officials have always been the #1 enemies of ISIS and movement that are like ISIS. So they will always identify government officials or head of state and declare them or defame them or issue some defaming words against them. All right, next, please. All right, so that is what I just finished is what we found about ISIS. And in relation to Boko Haram, similarly also we have carried out a similar analysis of the data that we have collected. And what we managed to identify are 4 major themes. One is religion, similar to ISIS. And then we have recruitment and call to jihad, which is also similar. But in the case of Boko Haram, it focuses a lot on its ideological, it is ideology, and it also tries as much as it can, more often than not, to try to affiliate itself with other groups or with other movements within the Muslim world. Next, please. So yeah, when it comes, of course, to religion, it also does the same or similar to what ISIS does. Okay, next, which is, of course, claiming or to claim that it is fighting and it is working to establish Sharia, and it is try also to show that it is a godly organization or a movement that is doing whatever it is doing for the sake of God and for all this, which is already, of course, known about this movement. Okay, next. All right. So when it comes to recruitment and call to jihad, there is slight difference between what we have found in the case of ISIS and what we have found in the case of Boko Haram. Boko Haram actually tried to show that it is having, or its members are having a good life. Why? Because, of course, unlike ISIS members, Boko Haram members or the organization and the leaders of the organization are moving in a forest. and they have been isolated for quite some time. So there are always, of course, speculations, and sometimes, of course, government forces will use some form of propaganda in trying to show that these people actually they're really suffering and they are not really having the kind of life that they want. However, since Boko Haram has access or can tell its own part of the story using these video messages. So it will usually talk about how good life it is for or how good life is to its members. All right, and next, please. All right, and then it will of course talk about jihad or call existing members and people actually who are sympathetic towards the organization to commit their life for the cause. Okay, and then of course try to recruit people who are not yet there. One thing that is very important here is that it usually ISIS and Boko Haram are using religious texts, of course, in trying to recruit, to legitimize its cause, to legitimize the activities and whatever the movement is, or this movement are doing. Next, please. All right, so I've already talked about this. Next. Okay, all right. So when it comes to ideology, of course, Boko Haram all the time will talk about its own ideology, which is something that we don't really quite find, or we don't find in the case of ISIS quite often. Boko Haram will always try to talk about its ideology, always try to explain or to clarify what its ideology is all about, which is quite, of course, different from what ISIS does. Okay, next. And it will, of course, you know, all the time so or denounce national symbols. So Boko Haram, unlike of course ISIS, which doesn't really quite talk so much about it is enmity towards secularism and all this. However, Boko Haram is more keen all the time or is very vocal in relation to this. So it will always talk about that it rejects national symbols like the Nigerian state, the secular system, and the democratic system, and anything that is related to that. And of course, it uses this to reject also modern education. So for those people probably who are not very familiar with Boko Haram, the word Boko Haram or the name Boko Haram itself means Western education is forbidden. So it uses these videos most of the time or a lot of times to reject or to denounce Western education. So it will be arguing against many notions or many theories or it is on perception about subject and some beliefs probably within the Western education or some subject under the Western education. Next, please. All right. Interestingly, of course, Boko Haram tries to affiliate itself with other movements. Can you click next, please? Yeah. Okay, next. Yeah. So, yeah, it always tried to affiliate itself with other movements, like, of course, ISIS, and even before then, trying to affiliate itself with Al Qaeda and or identify itself with Taliban and all this. So this is something that we found. So there is some form of maybe lack of self-esteem with Boko Haram side. So, but at the same time, also they try to maintain autonomy. So they show that no, there are certain aspects that even though we are affiliated to ISIS, however, this is us. We have to, we are in control of this aspect of our movement, of this aspect of our organization. All right, next, please. And try to always exploit, of course, Muslim struggles somewhere else, like for example, Palestinians, like the Chechenians, those type of struggles that or people actually in various parts of the Muslim world. Okay, next. Okay, I'm not gonna waste, spend a lot of time here because I've already talked mostly about the similarities and the differences. So there are some, after going through these campaigns, there are some differences or some few differences, but ideologically speaking, we can easily say that Boko Haram and ISIS are very similar ideologically. However, in terms of their approach in these video messages and in terms of content, there are some differences. This Boko Haram usually, or we found that Boko Haram focuses a lot on its affiliation, its ideology, and trying to clarify, trying to explain all the time its ideology to its audience, which is of course not something that is so common with ISIS. However, in terms of religion and the recruitment and call to jihad, these are all we found this common between the two movements. Boko Haram also doesn't really quite talk about its fallen heroes, unlike ISIS, which usually or which is so keen in doing that. Next, please. All right, so affiliation with like-minded movement, as I said earlier, ISIS is not really trying to affiliate itself with any other movement within or any other like-minded movement. However, Boko Haram is always keen and trying as much as it can to maybe establish its own legitimacy, probably I would say, by linking itself with this or with ISIS or with Al Qaeda before that, or even with Taliban some years back. So this is something that we found in the case of Boko Haram, which is of course not there in the case of ISIS. Next, please. So to conclude, without really taking so much time, to conclude, of course, as I said, and I have talked extensively about this, we can see some similarities, and there are, of course, some common or commonalities between these two movements. But at the same time, also, there are some slight differences. But ideologically, we can conclude that, yes, in terms of their approach, in terms of the way they produce these messages, the kind of argument that they use, in using Islamic texts, for example, to establish or to legitimize or illegitimize what they don't like or what they are against, this is very common between the two movements. There has been, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, there has been some influence from ISIS to Boko Haram in terms of quality of what they produce and the messages, and in even trying to use some superficial aspect of the videos or of the content of the videos to attract and to make the videos more appealing probably to the audience. So these are some few notes that we have, or some few differences that we have noted during the collection and the analysis of this data. So without so much, sorry for taking so much of your time first, and without taking some more, I will end my presentation here, and I will thank all the panelists, and I will thank all the organizers and the audience, also those who have been patiently following up this presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And I will welcome any questions or Q&A if there is. Yeah.
Thank you for that very interesting presentation. There are a couple of questions for you. So the first one, which comes from Oro in the audience. It's a 2-point question, so I'm going to ask one part, let you answer that before I give you the second part.
Okay, all right.
A little bit easier that way.
Okay.
So in your research, or have you seen any data that or analysis that focuses on the usage of live streaming features of any social media platforms which either movement has used to recruit or train? And if so, is there any information on what type of viewers were exposed to that live stream?
Okay. Thank you so much, really. Quite an interesting question. So let me just say, put it this way. Of course, some years back, especially, some like a little over 5 years ago, this movement actually, they were having their ways on social media, and they were actually using the social media quite a lot. Many different type of platforms, YouTube, for example, the Facebook, Twitter, and many other type of these social media platforms. However, that started to change, of course, when the media, these social media owners started actually to change their policies. Of course, by that came after some pressure from some state or some countries after the global coalition against extremism. So that, of course, put a lot of pressure on this movement. However, of course, they started also to adapt, to get more clever. In the case, let me give you an example. In the case of ISIS, it will usually use a a title, of course, for its Twitter account that is very much disguising. For example, using a football team or a name of a football team or something like that. Boko Haram, by contrast, Boko Haram is not quite as advanced as ISIS. It doesn't really use Twitter. There are some, it used them, but very little actually, and that didn't really last that long. And we can see, of course, it is not. It didn't have the survey to be able to use those kind of social media. So what Boko Haram has always been very good at is producing this kind of videos. Before, of course, when it produces them, then it will upload them itself on its social media account. However, this, of course, after after the tightening of social media platforms, then that had to change. So Boko Haram also had to change its tactics. So it started now to create or to use some platforms that are very much encrypted, like WhatsApp, for example, like Telegram, and even this, because there are also some monitoring on this type of social media platform, but it will create quite a lot of accounts. So when you close this one, they jump into this one. When they close this, so they use this quite a lot. So this is basically what I would say, in relation to this question. I don't know whether I have answered it.
Thank you. And then the second part of the question, given the current pandemic, which has pushed more and more people and activities online, like this, and there's limitations on movement. Do you see possibilities for these movements using digital platforms to actually do training? So to train new recruits, we've seen recruiting being happening on via these platforms, but you see them using, or the potential for them to use them for training.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you also for this question. Also, it is quite an interesting one and a bit tricky one. And I would have to answer it also, or respond to this question by first talking about ISIS and then talking about Boko Haram, because there are some differences and even ability also. There are some differences in terms of the abilities of this movement. ISIS now, of course, very much weakened. So, and a lot of, most of the platforms that they can be able to use really are being under constant monitoring. And by having that, of course, or based on this, then it will be very difficult really to imagine having this type of movement actually, conducting their online, or they are training online, or recruitment. Yes, it still goes, because they find a way actually to disguise their messages, and they find always ways to, for example, like recently I came across some form of data that is talking about how they're using now gaming, for example. So they try to use gaming, and because now teenagers are very interested in gaming, so this is also a way that this kind of movement can easily reach out to this kind of, and it is very unsuspecting way. Not many people actually suspect that, this type of movement actually will go on to gaming and communicate with kids or communicate with teenagers. Boko Haram, as I said, is not really as advanced. It's pretty much primitive compared to ISIS. And it is living very far away from maybe where facilities are. They are living or the leaders of the movement are living in Sambisa forest, which is a forest. Even to upload or to release this kind of videos, what they use or what they do is to send some people, some of their members who, of course, can disguise. They go into the cities or into where they can find some networks, and then they upload or they send. Usually, they will send into those WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups that they have, and then like that, then they share them. Sometimes they send some to some identified journalists also as well. So you see, if that is the case, then it will be very difficult for them to have the network or to be able really to conduct some form of training or something like that. So I don't see it really. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go back now to some of the, we have a sprinkling of other questions for some other of the panelists. The first question is actually, I would say, open to anybody on the panel who would like to address it. Several of the panelists have used the START data set, the Global Terrorism Database, to look at terrorism incidents. And this question is, why is official data on terrorism from various governments less available or even not available to the public and independent analysts to do research? So any of the panelists who would like to comment on the availability of official government data on terrorist activities, feel free to just unmute and start talking.
Okay, I think I can take that one.
Okay.
Okay, I can just give a comment. Okay, when it comes to data collection, and which is of course one of the reasons why we have to rely many a time on data that are released or that are produced by the movement themselves, because mostly this type of data is very sensitive. And security-wise, it's not really by making that kind of data available, then it will compromise some form of operation. For example, when you go to Nigeria, this fight is still ongoing. So if, let's say, for example, the government, of course, knows a lot more than what the public knows, but it cannot make that data or that knowledge or whatever it knows about the movement readily available for use for the media or for researchers, for example. Doing that, of course, will compromise what the government is doing. And since we have to accept that also, this type of movement also, they are, of course, always following up, updating themselves, and knowing, of course, what is going on, what the government is doing. The case, for example, when you go to Nigeria, and the case of Boko Haram, they are always trying to produce a video that will always go against a claim that has been previously made by the government side. So, which means that they are following up. They know actually what is going on, and they're collecting their own intelligence. So, if that's the case, then to collect, or for the government to make some sensitive data or some sensitive information about their operations available for research, I think that really will be compromising some of their operations. Yeah.
Thank you. Would any other panelists like to address that question? Nikki.
I'd like to answer that. Yes, thank you for that question. That's great question. First is for security, as Abu Bakar mentioned. In the Philippines, so many terrorist attacks, and the police officers and the Philippine Army do not easily release data. But there are so many ways. As a researcher, you have to really exert much effort to conduct. If you're searching for data, you can actually, there are so many open access data, so you can use e-libraries. But if you are targeting qualitative approach, it depends on the nature of your research. If your research is qualitative approach, Abu Bakar, I guess, Abu Bakar focused on thematic analysis. So he did some data coming from Twitter, am I right, Abu Bakar? And then he did an analysis, thematic analysis. But there are reports from reputable organizations, reputable networks. So you really have to do some kind of research effort to look into hashtags, for example, on Twitter or Facebook. If you wanna find data on terrorist attacks or video, you really have to find ways and means and ask for help for policymakers and intelligence. You really have to write, because there are some ethical considerations you have to also consider. That you can write, but there are available public documents recently published. For example, some data which, say for example, the global terrorism data, it's really amazing, because you can really see the data. And I myself, as a researcher, found some really evidence coming from the Philippines, some data. So I've seen this really efforts coming from different researchers in the global database at GTD. So amazing, because they really exert much effort to update themselves per year. And that is the task of a researcher. If you have to set, you really have to set your goals. Say, for example, your parameter is on Southeast Asia. So you really have to find documents. You can conduct documents analysis. So it can be observational analysis versus experimental. It was even discussed in the previous methodology. In our conference last time, I've seen there's a difference between observational evidence approach and experimental evidence approach. So you might as well want to consider observational from types of surveys, data statistics. You can analyze from the data sets, database, and some other information if you want to explore more about the impact of finances on remittances, how remittances being used to finance this kind of terrorism activities. Then you can see the variables, how it is impacting quantitatively. So I guess in my research, I developed an instrument, and it's contextualized in the Philippines. And I really wanted to work with other scholars from different countries. And I guess this is, I have this constraint because I'm not a Malaysian, I'm not an Indonesian, and I'm only focused in the Philippines. And I wanted more about data in public, and most locals, most Indonesians have a lot of knowledge and ideas where to get that kind of document. So maybe you can have this kind of strategy, talking to networking with other scholars. That's another suggestion, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And I will just, since one of the things START invest so much effort in is getting data out there for scholars, practitioners, policymakers to use. From our perspective, it's helpful to have more independent academics do some of the data collection. First of all, if you're doing comparison across different countries, every government on the planet, and sometimes if you're in a federal system, there are multiple government entities that have different definitions of terrorism. And so it can be hard, even when official data is available, to compare data from different countries because their definitions are different. So it's like apples and oranges. They're similar, but they're not, they don't line up perfectly. And so that's one reason we do invest a lot of effort in updating and maintaining the global terrorism database, because there's a single definition of terrorism being applied to events all over the world. So that makes cross-national comparison especially much easier. Also with government, sometimes the definition of terrorism changes over time. So no new laws are passed, which makes new activities terrorism that weren't before. So there's also that sort of continuity of data even within a specific government. And so again, having independent researchers collect the data, they can sort of state their definition and then keep it consistent over time, which helps also for the longitudinal comparison. So that's
Sorry, one more thing. I want to add something.
Yes,
there.
please add.
Dr. Amy actually pointed out the constraints in terms of how we perceive. Someone who asked about conclusive, how conclusive my findings in my research. In terms of foreign terrorist fighters, I guess because in Malaysia, it's a Muslim country. In the Philippines, it's more of Catholic. The perception could be different the way we perceive the students' perceptions. I guess that's the point of Dr. Amy. And here comes in really the collaboration with other research. So I call on those scholars out there listening. If you really are interested, you can contact me. And it's, it's been really great working with other people. I've also contacted some of my friends in Georgetown University when I was in DC last February. And it's great to really network with other international scholars like you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we have reached the end of this panel. Thank you again for joining. I know many of you have been with us throughout the week, so I hope you have found it useful, and we look forward to rejoining with you on the 19th with our next set of panels and presentations. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day if you are in the region, and for those of us who are further west, have a good evening. Thank you very much.